Somewhere along the way, grocery stores stopped feeling like part of our lives. They became faster, quieter, more efficient, and somehow emptier. Picture a weekday afternoon. Your mom grabs her purse. The car keys jingle. Grocery day. Inside, the doors slide open. Familiar sounds. Familiar faces. The manager nods. The bagger smiles. The coffee grinder hums. In this video, we're walking back into that store. Not just to remember what disappeared, but to relive the moments that made those ordinary trips unforgettable. The coin horse and the gumball machine. Right by the entrance, before you even made it inside, there was magic. A small plastic horse that rocked back and forth for a quarter. A bright red gumball machine that felt like treasure if you were lucky enough to get one. Kids didn't beg for tablets or phones back then. They begged for 1 coin. Parents would say, "If you behave in the store, we'll stop here on the way out." And suddenly, grocery shopping had stakes, motivation, meaning. You didn't even care how long the ride lasted. You cared that it was yours. Today, those little machines are gone. And so is that quiet deal between parents and kids, that simple promise that turned an ordinary chore into something you looked forward to. The old shopping carts. Shopping carts used to feel different. Taller, heavier, more solid. The kind with that fold-down child seat that never really felt safe, but somehow always worked. Kids didn't sit politely inside. They climbed underneath. They stood on the back bar. They rode like it was a parade float. You weren't strapped in. You weren't monitored. You were just there, rolling through the aisles, watching the world go by. Those carts were part of the experience. They squeaked. They rattled. One wheel always pulled to the left. And yet, every store had them, and every kid knew exactly how to ride them just right. When employees looked like professionals. There was a time when grocery store employees dressed like it mattered. Cashiers wore neat shirts. Managers wore ties. Baggers tucked their shirts in. They didn't look like they were passing time. They looked like they were doing a job and doing it with pride. They greeted customers, made eye contact, called adults sir and ma'am. Some even remembered your family. It wasn't about formality. It was about respect, both directions. Walking into the store felt like entering a place with standards. Not corporate slogans, real ones. The vacuum tube tester for your TV. Up near the front of the store, there was often a strange-looking machine most kids didn't understand, but adults did. If your television started acting up, you didn't throw it away. You pulled out the vacuum tubes, brought them to the store, and tested them yourself. You'd plug each one into the socket, press the button, watch the needle. Good tube, bad tube, simple. There was something empowering about that. You weren't dependent on companies or service calls. You could fix things yourself, right there in the grocery store. Cigarette vending machines by the door. It sounds unbelievable now, but it used to be completely normal. Right near the entrance, a vending machine that sold cigarettes. No counter, no questions, no ID. Adults used them for convenience. Teenagers saw them as temptation. Everyone knew they were there. They weren't hidden. They weren't locked up. They were treated like soda machines. Eventually, people realized that convenience came with consequences. And slowly, they disappeared. Not because the world became softer, but because it finally started paying attention. The spinning comic book rack. Somewhere near the front of the store, there was always that tall, spinning rack. Rows and rows of comic books, covers exploding with color and drama. You didn't just walk past it. You stopped. Every time, you'd flip through them slowly, careful not to bend a corner, knowing your mom was watching. Superheroes, westerns, mystery stories, adventures bigger than your world, right there for a few coins. That rack wasn't just selling comics. It was feeding imagination. Today, kids carry entire libraries in their pockets. But somehow, nothing feels quite like standing there, turning that rack with your own hands, discovering a new story one cover at a time. TV guide at the checkout. Right beside the register, there was always a small stack of TV guide. It wasn't optional. It was essential. Because if you missed the show when it aired, you missed it. There was no replay, no streaming, no catching up later. Families planned their evenings around that little magazine. You'd circle your favorite shows with a pen. You'd argue about what was worth watching. You'd build the whole week around it. That tiny booklet controlled living rooms across America. And somehow, we were perfectly fine with that. The legs pantyhose display. If you wandered through certain aisles, you'd spot them. Those strange plastic eggs stacked neatly in a display. Legs pantyhose. Kids didn't understand them, but adults did. Every household seemed to have a few of those eggs lying around, repurposed into sewing kits, coin holders, junk containers. It was packaging you didn't throw away. You kept it. You reused it. You found another purpose for it. Back then, even the packaging felt like it had a second life. Brach's pick and mix candy. The Brach's display wasn't just candy. It was ritual. Rows of open bins filled with individually wrapped sweets, caramels, toffees, divinity, peppermints. You didn't grab whatever was on top. You chose carefully. Every visit, a different mix. Every bowl at home, a custom creation. Some couples built traditions around it. A small bag of candy on the coffee table after dinner. Cup of coffee, a quiet living room, a familiar comfort. It wasn't about sugar, it was about routine, about togetherness. The in-store coffee grinder. Somewhere in the store, you'd hear it before you saw it. That low, steady rumble of the coffee grinder. You'd pour your beans in, choose your grind, push the button, and suddenly, the whole aisle smelled like fresh coffee. It felt luxurious, personal, like you were doing something special, not just buying a product. Some stores even did it for you right at the counter. You didn't need a specialty shop. You didn't need fancy branding. You just needed beans and that sound. Coffee in real tin cans. Before coffee came in colourful plastic tubs and paper bags, it came in sturdy metal tins. Folgers, Maxwell House, brands every household knew. Those cans kept the coffee fresher. But more than that, they didn't get thrown away. They became tool holders, nail containers, screw organizers, storage for whatever needed a home in the garage. You didn't call it recycling. You called it normal, the price gun on every item. There was a tiny sticker on almost everything in the store. A price printed by hand using a clunky little gun. It meant you didn't have to guess. You didn't have to trust the shelf tag. You saw the cost right there in your hand. Someone's job was to walk aisle by aisle, marking every single item. It sounds slow. It sounds inefficient. But it also felt honest, transparent. Like the store wasn't hiding anything from you. Toys inside cereal boxes. The cereal aisle wasn't about breakfast. It was about strategy. You didn't choose cereal based on taste. You chose it based on the prize inside. Tiny plastic submarines. Glow-in-the-dark rings. Decoder cards. Stickers. Sometimes the toy was better than the cereal itself. Parents knew it. Kids knew it. And every box became a negotiation. You'd shake the box gently, tilt it, listen for the rattle. That moment when you finally poured out the cereal and felt the toy slide into your hand, that was victory. Ding-dongs wrapped in foil. Ding-dongs used to feel different. Not because the recipe was magic, but because the experience was. Each one came wrapped in shiny foil. You peeled it back slowly, like opening a gift. They tasted richer, fresher, more special. Not something you grabbed mindlessly. Something you looked forward to. It wasn't just a snack. It was a small reward at the end of a long day, and for a lot of people, they've never quite tasted the same since. jelly jars that became drinking glasses. Welch's jelly jars weren't just containers. They were future glasses. You'd finish the jelly, wash the jar, and suddenly it joined the rest of the set in the cupboard. Different designs, different characters, different memories. No one called it clever marketing. No one called it collectible. It was just normal to drink milk, water, or juice out of old jelly jars. Some families built entire kitchens around them, and somehow they always felt sturdier than anything you can buy today. Nesquik in the heavy tin can. The yellow Nesquik tin was everywhere, heavy, solid, almost indestructible. The lid was so tight you usually needed a spoon, a knife, or a screwdriver to pry it open. Kids learned problem solving before they ever learned patience. Once it was empty, the can didn't disappear. It became storage. Craft supplies, tool holders, random household treasure. It wasn't designed to be reused, but it always was. Free gifts inside detergent boxes. Laundry detergent used to come with surprises. Real ones. Drinking glasses. Hand towels. Kitchen items. Not cheap digital coupons. Not QR codes. Physical things you could hold. You'd stand in the aisle looking at different brands, not for cleaning power, but for what came inside. And those gifts didn't feel disposable. They stayed in your house for years. Some of them are still sitting in cabinets today. Soda in glass bottles. The soda aisle sounded different back then. Clink, clink, clink. Glass bottles stacked in cardboard carriers. Heavy. Cold. Solid in your hand. You paid a deposit for them. And when you brought them back, you got money back. It taught kids responsibility without anyone ever saying a word. Don't throw it away. Bring it back. It still has value. Somehow, soda even tasted better in glass. Sauce and condiments in glass jars. Ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, relish. Almost everything came in glass. When it was nearly empty, you didn't throw it out. You added a little water, shook it. Got every last drop. Those jars didn't go in the trash. They became storage containers, leftover holders, drinking cups, bug catchers for curious kids. A simple jar could live 10 different lives. Colored toilet paper. It sounds strange now. But there was a time when bathroom decor mattered right down to the toilet paper. Pink, blue, yellow, green. People coordinated it with their rugs, their towels, their tubs. It wasn't seen as odd. It was seen as stylish. Guests noticed. Homeowners took pride in it. Today, everything is plain white. Cleaner, safer, simpler, but a little bit less personal too. The manual cash registers. You could hear it before you saw it. The sharp clack of buttons. The mechanical ding of the drawer. Cashiers didn't scan items. They knew the prices. Fingers flying across big plastic keys. Department buttons. Price buttons. Total buttons. Fast. Confident. Precise. As a kid, it felt like watching a performance. You stood there in quiet awe, hoping they wouldn't mess up your total. It wasn't automation, it was skill. And somehow, that made the moment feel more human, more real. The hand-slide credit card machine. If you paid with a credit card, it wasn't a beep and done, it was a whole ritual. The cashier would pull out a heavy metal machine, lay down carbon paper, place your card, then slide the handle across with a loud, satisfying clunk. Your name and number appeared like magic. You signed the slip. They tore off the copies. That was it. No chips, no chap, no digital record floating in the cloud. Just paper, ink, and trust. It felt slower, but it also felt tangible, honest. Paper bags, not plastic. Every grocery trip ended the same way. Tall brown paper bags lined up neatly in your cart. They weren't just containers. They were useful. They became book covers for school, They became art projects on rainy afternoons. They became storage, craft supplies, puppets. You didn't throw them away automatically. You saved them. Paper bags felt like part of the household ecosystem. Not disposable. Not invisible. Just another quiet example of how little things were used and reused. The bagger who took your groceries to the car. There was always someone waiting at the end of the checkout lane. A bagger, usually a teenager, sometimes shy, sometimes talkative, always part of the experience. They packed your groceries carefully, cold with cold, bread on top, eggs protected. Then they pushed your cart all the way to the car. It wasn't a premium service, it was just how things worked. For some families, the bagger became familiar, a friendly face every Friday, a name you learned, a life you slowly watched unfold. And sometimes, those brief interactions turned into something lasting. Friendships, memories, stories that carried on for decades. That kind of human connection is hard to replace with a self-checkout screen. S&H green stamps. They came in small booklets. Thin little stamps you collected over time. You didn't think much about them as a kid. You just knew they mattered. Every grocery trip added a few more pages. Every full booklet felt like progress. Some grandparents saved for months. Some parents saved for years. And then one day, those stamps turned into something real. A toaster, a blender, a set of dishes. Sometimes even an encyclopedia that lived on the family shelf for decades. It wasn't just a reward system. It was a quiet lesson in patience, in consistency, in believing that small efforts could turn into something meaningful. That idea feels rarer now than the stamps themselves. Missing children on milk cartons. There was a time when you couldn't pour a glass of milk without seeing a face, a child's face, a name, an age, a place they were last seen. It was impossible to ignore. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't softened. It sat right there on the breakfast table. Parents would point it out. Kids would ask questions. Families would pause. It made the world feel heavier, but it also made communities feel more connected. Everyone was being asked to look out for each other's children. Not out of fear, but out of responsibility. It's hard to explain to someone today how something so small, a carton of milk, could carry that much weight. When adults looked like adults, this one isn't an object. It isn't a product. It isn't something you could buy. But it's what a lot of people miss the most. Adults dressed like adults. They spoke like adults. They carried themselves with a kind of quiet dignity. People held doors open. They made eye contact. They said please and thank you without irony. Cashiers weren't scrolling. Customers weren't shouting. Kids weren't running the store. There were standards. Not written ones, social ones. And when you were a child walking through those grocery aisles, you could feel it. You were watching how grown-ups behaved. You were learning without anyone ever teaching you. Maybe that's why so many people don't just miss the stores. They miss the atmosphere, the tone, the way it felt to move through the world back then. Maybe grocery stores didn't just change. Maybe life did. Maybe what we really miss isn't the glass bottles, or the paper bags, or the old cash registers. Maybe we miss standing beside our parents in those aisles, hearing their voices, watching their routines, feeling safe just walking next to them. A lot of those people aren't here anymore, but somehow the memories still are. They live in the smell of coffee, the sound of a register, the feel of a paper bag in your hands. If any of these moments felt familiar to you, you're not alone. Tell us what you remember, what aisle your memories still live in, what moment you wish you could walk back into just one more time. Because as long as we're still telling these stories, those old grocery stores never fully disappear.